Boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of Alien Romulus, the seventh film in the Alien franchise. And this serves as kind of a standalone in the Alien film franchise, which is more of a kind of a prequel sequel, or what they call a inner sequel, if that makes any sense. Being as though it's set between the events of Alien, which was released in 1979, and Aliens, which was released in 1986. This film is directed by Freddy Alvarez, who gave us Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead film from 2013, I believe. And it stars Kaylee Spaney, who we just saw in Civil War earlier this year, also starring David Johnson and many others. This film was initially going to be released straight on Hulu, just like Prey, the prequel to Predator, was going to be. Well, at least it was, but this was going to follow that same business plan, if you will. But after Prey performed so well on Hulu, and it was just universally praised, and I guess Disney and 20th Century Studios felt like, man, we missed out on some ducats here, because we should have released this in theaters. And I agree, it would have been a joy to watch that film in theaters. And so with Alien Romulus being filmed around that time, they quickly made the decision to transfer it from streaming to the big screen. And this was an excellent decision, in my humble opinion, because there's no other way to watch an Alien film but on the big screen. I mean, that's it's just made for that. You know what I'm saying? But this go around, this film follows these young space colonists who, while scavenging this derelict space station, come face to face with a xenomorph. And that's the movie. It's a pretty simple, basic log line, pretty simple, basic plot premise, but it's so much to it. This film was excellent. This was a highly anticipated film of mine, being as though I am a huge fan of the Alien franchise. If you listen to my reviews of all of the Alien films, you know that I was super excited for it. And if you haven't listened to it, it's on the podcast feed on YouTube for you to go and listen to, if you don't mind. But this was highly anticipated, and I was not disappointed at all. Wow. That's the biggest reaction I could give to this movie. Wow. This was close to perfection you can get to an Alien film. This is clearly the best Alien film since Aliens in 1986. It leaps and bounds better than any other film. And you can put it up there with Alien and Aliens. Will I say it's better than either one of those two? I'm not really prepared to say that, but it lives up. It is truly a worthy successor to those films. Freddy Alvarez, who, as I mentioned, directed some excellent horror films. He knows horror, and he brought the horror into this into this franchise. The first Alien film in 1979 was a horror film. I felt that was close to a horror film than any other Alien film has ever gotten. They turned it to science fiction, action, space operas. But Alien was truly a horror film, with the atmosphere and the tone. Perfect movie. This film really leans heavy into the horror. I was literally white knuckled on the edge of my seat the entire film. The entire film, it never lets up. The pacing of this film was amazing. I mean, you had the ticking clock element in this movie with our protagonist on this space station, and no spoilers. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but it's they're on a clock, you know. And then you add a xenomorph into the picture, the clock is sped up. So it is the most heightened situation you can find yourself in for these young colonists. And what made this so appealing, if you're a fan of Freddie Alvarez's work in the past, this is a blending of his works. You know, the two films that I mentioned, Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, is basically that with aliens. You know, it's more Don't Breathe. It's like Don't Breathe with a xenomorph instead of a blind man. It's precisely like that, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a knock. That's not plagiarism because he's not. I mean, what is he doing? Stealing from himself? You know, that's his movie. You know, but excellent job directing this film. The tone of this film was just creepy as I don't know what. To capture the desperation of these young actors or these young characters here, in a situation that this was a last resort. They had to do this. This was an act of desperation, you know, in order to live a better life. And you felt that. You understood why they did what they did, you know, basically turning themselves into thieves at the end of the day. But you get it, you know, and only to find the worst situation imaginable on that space station. As far as our actors are concerned, I think all of the actors and actresses did an excellent job. Kaylee Speedney, who is the lead in this film, is our quote unquote Ripley clone or ripoff. And I'm not saying that's a plot point. She is nothing to do with Ripley, has nothing to do with this movie. But as far as our Sigourney Weaver type character, she did an excellent job. And she wasn't Sigourney Weaver. She wasn't Ellen Ripley. She wasn't trying to duplicate that or mimic that character. She was her own character. And I appreciated that because I was a little concerned about that, to be honest with you, going into the movie. Was she going to try to copy Sigourney Weaver's performance as Ellen Ripley, being as though she's the female lead or the lead in this film? But she wasn't. She was her own character, and yet she was still as strong as Ripley, as had all the hero elements that you would find in a Ripley. But she was just a different character, and I loved her character. I loved the chemistry between her and David Johnson, who plays Andy, her brother, quote unquote brother. And once again, no spoilers, but their arc through this movie is so touching. It is a touching arc in the middle of this horror, bloody mess. There is a beautiful story between our two lead characters that pays off, man. It pays off. It develops and pays off at the end. Beautifully told in the midst of all this chaos that transpired throughout this film. And David Johnson as Andy, my God, stole the movie. Stole the movie. This was Kaylee Spaney's movie, but David Johnson, man, I can't wait to see him in more stuff. Excellent job. His character has a turn in the middle of the movie and another turn at the end of the movie that makes so much sense. It is so logical, and it was just beautifully written. That character was written well and acted even better by this young man. I am so impressed by his performance in this film. Everybody did a good job. The xenomorphs in this movie, really good. They're this movie is more in line. If I had to compare it to any of the six previous Alien films, it's more in line with the very first one in 1979. It in the way that the alien is hidden. You know, the xenomorph is hidden and creeping in the shadows. It was like a monster. It was just a monster movie, and they treated it like a monster that was creeping in the dark, yet showcasing the intelligence of this alien as well. It was it was done great. I did have a couple of gripes. This wasn't a picture perfect movie. I was a little let down by a couple of things. Without getting into spoilers, there's a certain scene or character, I should say, where the CG on that character just didn't work for me. It wasn't enough to take me out of the movie, but it was skirting the line. It was it was skirting the line. I was like, I don't know if I can get with this. I really wasn't getting down with it. you know, I get where they were going with it. I kind of had to adjust my brain to not see what I'm seeing, to really stay locked in on the movie. But as far as that character, made all the sense in the world to have that character there and everything that was going on involving that character. But I just didn't like the CG on it. It just didn't look right because all the rest of the CG looked great. That was the only thing that didn't work. Everything else looked great. The shots of in space, the shots on the ship and with the xenomorphs and all that looked amazing. Um, but that just didn't work for me. I didn't like that. And at the end of this film, as satisfying as it was, there is an element of the end that you really got to suspend disbelief. And I know we're talking about a movie that involves aliens and space that bleed acid, but it was just something about it I just couldn't get with. And I hate to mention it like this because if I'll go any deeper into it, it's spoiling the movie. So I don't want to spoil it, but it's like, why? Where did this come from? I get why it happened, but why is this happening with that? I don't know. I'm dancing around it. But anyway, if I keep talking, I'm end up spoiling it. But the point is, I didn't like that element. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The final showdown thing. That's that. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyways, other than those two elements of the film, this was awesome. This was awesome. I enjoyed it. It was everything that I was hoping it would be. The horror in it was great. It was bloody. It's crazy because it was bloody, but it wasn't super bloody. If that makes any sense, it wasn't just a gore fest with chest bursting open, which they did have that, but it wasn't like a million people's guts and bloods and getting ripped apart and all that stuff. It wasn't all that, but it had all that in it. It makes sense when you see the movie, but it's not to the point where you throw up after watching it. It's not disgustingly disgusting horror, you know what I'm saying? But my God, man, this was brutal. Some of the kills in here were brutal. I mean, I will say this, that once again, no spoilers, but they had one kill in here that was probably the most disturbing kill in all of the Alien franchise films. It was so messed up. Actually, two. I'm sorry, two that were so messed up. But one in particular, one was like torture, man. It was like, oh my God, will you kill him already? You know, it was it was brutal. It was brutal. Uh, but I loved every minute of it. But yes, Alien Romulus is up there. It is up there. A worthy sequel in this franchise. Uh, Kudos to Disney 20th Century Studios for keeping this franchise alive. A lot of people were worried, me being one of them, that we weren't going to get Predator films anymore. We weren't going to get Alien films anymore once Disney bought Fox, because those two IPs are under the Fox label, 20th Century Fox label. So Disney, you think Disney, bubblegum Mickey Mouse and all that other good stuff, they're not going to have no hardcore sci-fi horror films come out and all this. They're not going to spend money on that. They're too busy making Marvel movies. Well, they're still making these movies, and they're making them in some good quality, man. With Prey and this film, I mean, hats off. I gotta give y'all a standing ovation. Great job. Loved it. Alien Romulus, which is currently in theaters, gets a letter grade of a strong, I'm talking bodybuilder strong, B+. I want to give it higher, but I don't want to fall victim to recency bias. I don't want to do that, but it is a strong B+. I truly enjoyed this film. This is one of those films that when it comes out on streaming or come on digital, I'm watching it. It pops up on television, I'm stopping and watching it. It's that doggone good. But I would love to know, if you watched Alien Romulus, what did you think? And are you planning to go check it out this weekend? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe and like this video if you don't mind. Also, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of the 7th Alien film, Alien Romulus. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.